meeting of the Historic Review Board. First, we will ask if there are any public comments for items not on the agenda this evening. All right, hearing none, I think we will move on to our preservation grant, which is our first item. Is there a staff report associated?
There is, and I wanted to let the board know the preservation grant staff report that was attached was unfortunately an older version of the staff report I was writing. And so I wanted to identify some changes that were made but weren't evident in what you saw. We've been having some server issues at the city, and I think what happened was I attached a different version that I was normally, because didn't have access to our normal servers. So I apologize. The majority of the staff report is correct. And so I will provide an overview and identify where the information is incorrect for the board. And then the applicant is here this evening for if you have any questions. So I might share my screen real quickly. Let's see. Okay. So this is a preservation grant. As you can see, the front page had the old grant number. So as I said, apologize. This is PG 2301. So once again, this was an older version that was attached. Same applicant, same property. The applicant previously went in front of the Historic Review Board for a preservation grant in 2022. The board approved an after the fact approval of some window repair. There was some miscommunication between Kelly Reed, the previous preservation planner, and the applicant, and kind of a very special case. The board did approve an after the fact grant awardee to this applicant. They're back again with phase 2, same repair specialist Jeffrey Franz, but 3 additional windows. And so what you see here is a request for $1,000. This work has not already been done. So once again, this is the incomplete version. This was from the last application. There is $4,000 left in this grant cycle in 2023. If the applicant is able to complete this work in 2023, we have enough money to pay for this. So I'm going to scroll down. This information is still correct. This is the Christian Hartman House, kind of where McLoughlin neighborhood meets downtown, kind of in the interstitial area. I'm going to keep scrolling. These the windows you see here are the proposed, are not the proposed windows. Here we go. You know what? This is completely the last one. So hold on a second. I'm going to unshare my screen. One second. Stop sharing. And I am going to see if I can find the actual completed one. So apologies. Here we go. And I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so this is the version that would have been attached to the agenda. This is Preservation Grant 2301, same proposal. This is $1,000 for the wood repair, and I'm going to keep scrolling down. So staff recommends approval of the grant. So this is the same information as what was attached. It's the property information, same picture of the house. So the applicant indicated that with the previous work being done, he would like to pay Jeffrey Franz to restore additional windows. And so you'll see the windows here. He's attached these. And when this is the interior of that window, he has two bids. Jeffrey Franz has a bid of $800 for each double hung multi-pane window and $700 for the single pane window. And then Chosen Wood Window has $1,676 for each, for a total of approximately $6,700. So the bids are approved and provided by the applicant. The board can award up to $1,000. So no matter what the applicant does, they are able to meet that that $1,000 match, because it's over a $2,000 proposed project. And so this is the bid from Jeffrey Franz. I'm going to scroll down. This is the Chosen Wood Window bid. And then it's the $1,676. Once again, there's $4,000 left for this fiscal year. And then just a big note that all work must be completed by June 30th of this year. So I apologize that in the creation of the agenda, I attached the preservation grant from last time rather than this time. So I'll have it available up to share if the board wants additional information. So this is continuing the work being done by the property owner with a phase 2 with a new request for $1,000. So I will stop and share at the moment. Let's hear if the board has any questions, and I see that the property owner is here this evening.
Would the property owner like to say anything if the board doesn't have any questions for Christina? Or, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, Board Member Green.
Just one question, I guess, and that is, I'm wondering about license and bond and so forth for, they have two bids. But I wonder if the contractor selected is licensed and bonded. I guess I realize that the grant money is awarded to the applicant, not to the contractor. So is something that...
Yeah, that's correct. You have to be a licensed contractor for paying for labor. And so both bids are licensed contractors.
Okay, all right. That was my only question.
The only time where the board would pay... sometimes the board is given money to pay for materials such as siding if an applicant wants to install it, but they wouldn't pay for any of the labor, just the raw material. And so in that situation, if you were an applicant and you wanted to reside the south elevation of your house, the board could reimburse the cost of purchasing the siding, but not the labor.
There are no more questions. Is Mr. Ula here to speak?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi.
All right.
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you for hearing me. Yeah, so as Christina has mentioned that I done this last year, and I kind of miscommunicated with Kelly Reed about the work getting done afterwards, like after getting the grant. So apologies for that. So yes, I'm planning on doing the same thing again this year with 3 more windows, and then continuing on next year to do the rest of the 3 windows. I have a total of like 11 windows. I'm trying to phase it out in 3 years so that I'm not paying too much money out of my own pocket in 1 year. And they are, Jeffrey does really wonderful work. That's why I wanted to go back with him, and I got his number, contact information from the U.S. website. So he does great work. So I just had to keep using him to finish the rest of the windows, and they turned out really well, as you can see from the last year's pictures. So that's all I said. Thank you.
Sounds great. Do any board members have any questions for Mr. Ula?
I do not. Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Green.
I guess just one other thing I noticed in the submittals, they chose to go with a natural finish. I guess a comment would be that that he would watch that as far as durability, because generally speaking, exterior paint will provide more protection than pretty much any natural finish would, particularly for ultraviolet protection and so forth like that. And it just seems to me like that typically they're painted. It might be typically a little bit, and I, that's the owner's choice. I certainly wouldn't, you might say, consider, I am in favor of the grant, and I wouldn't jeopardize that. It just seems like it might be a little bit more historically appropriate, and I guess I'm open to the other board members' thoughts about that too, if paint is a little bit more appropriate appearance.
I think it's up to the homeowner to decide. I don't think that the board, I don't think we rule on paint colors, right? Homeowners are allowed to do what they like to with the exterior paints in their house. So, yeah. Board Member Powell, did you have any thoughts?
Oh, I would just say that I understand what Board Member Green was saying. I mean, it makes sense if you're going to invest money in a window, you should try and have it finished well enough that it will be protected long term. And outdoor paint does a good job of that, but again, it's up to the owner to do whatever they want. I think it's just a cautionary statement from us saying that we're trying to preserve these windows. Let's do the best we can. His choice, but.
Well,
real quickly, encouraging property owners to do a couple windows every year was exactly the goal of this grant program. So this is great. You don't have to tackle everything at once, and taking little bite size is good. I do know that most window repair specialists don't usually get involved in painting. They leave that up to the property owner. And one technical piece is if painting the window is required for reimbursement, that may get more complicated. So recommending painting or recommendation makes a little more sense than requiring it, because oftentimes waiting for an applicant to paint it may take a bit, knowing the weather and the time of year, rather than getting the reimbursement for the work.
I agree. Well, I would move for approval of the preservation grant number PG 23-01.
I would second that.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Let's see, we have Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Powell.
Yes.
Chair Ferry.
Aye.
Motion carries. And to Fahad, I will send you a sign to put up in front of your house, and then you can just contact me when the work is done, and I can work on the reimbursement.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Are
everyone.
you confident that you'll be able to finish it by June 30th?
Yes, he is coming
Perfect.
this way, so I should be able to.
Fantastic.
So, great.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
once again, apologies for uploading the wrong preservation grant. We're working a little differently this month, so I apologize. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
So we will now move into the public hearing portion of the agenda. We have 2 public hearings on land use applications scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Historic Review Board are to be unbiased. Therefore, before the start of the hearing, I will ask the board members whether they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the board members have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge or relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any board member about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the board will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and email it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so that the city can notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. We will now open the record for Oregon City File number GLUA 2201 and HR 23-01. This is 204 Jefferson Street, alterations and additions on a historic structure. It's the Frank and Annie Busch house, and it's in the McLoughlin Conservation District. I will now ask each board member if they have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare, if they have made a site visit, and if they have noted any material information. Board member Green?
I have visited the site and no ex parte contact.
Okay, board member Powell?
I also have visited the site and I have no ex parte contact specifically to this project.
I have also visited the site and I have no ex parte contact or conflict of interest. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the board members about these disclosures? All right, well, we will now commence with the staff report.
All right, thank you, Chair. 1 second, let me start my slideshow. Okay, so this is, as mentioned, it's GLUA 2301 and HR 2301, located at 204 Jefferson Street, which is alteration additions on a historic structure in the McLoughlin Conservation District. The property is also located in the Geohazard Overlay District, and there is a separate notice application that it will occur, and actually I believe it's about to be noticed or just has been noticed. And so these are being reviewed concurrently, but one is a public hearing in front of the Historic Review Board, and the Geohazard is a notice, a limited land use notice, which is be a staff approval for the Geohazard. The property is located on Jefferson Street with us. It's faces Jefferson Street. You can kind of see there's a little bit of an odd appendage onto the property. The addition is towards the rear. And actually, I believe this is the Frank and Annie Busch house. This is a two-story Queen Anne house And as a designated structure, any any additions require historic review board approval. So what you see here is the existing addition.
Pardon me, Christina. We can't
sure.
see anything.
You can't see anything?
No, what?
Just you.
Just
you.
me? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me try this. Okay. Can you see? Slideshow. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to start. Do you see the slideshow now with the?
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the site location on Jefferson Street. There's a little appendage. That conversation may come up as we move through. And the addition is on the rear of the building right here. This is, as I mentioned, the Frank and Annie Busch house. It's a Queen Anne. It's a 2-story Queen Anne, one of our higher style Queen Annes in the district. You'll see here, this is the existing kind of small addition, and the applicant is really proposing to enlarge it to be a 2-story addition. So it's a reconstruction and addition onto up, along with a reconfiguration addition of a side porch. The McLoughlin Neighborhood Association did provide comment that they liked the renderings and as it related to this rear addition photo of existing condition. I have a slide that you'll see that kind of puts this photo right next to the renderings, but for the most part, the addition will hit the top of the addition will be about right here. So this is a way to conceptualize where the proposed addition would be as you're looking at the back of the house. As described in the application, this is kind of a reconfiguration of the downstairs addition and adding a 2nd-story addition. So the applicant has provided some net square footage for you to see, including the covered porch and the addition of the upstairs. Here is a layout of the site plan. What you see in black is the proposed area, the new addition that kind of adds on to what's already there to the footprint along with a new side porch. This shows the floor plan. So this is in the back. I don't have the 2nd story, but from what I understood, it's a new bathroom. Here's showing some side elevations and some rear elevations. So once again, this is the 2nd-story addition and a slight enlargement of what is currently, you see the 1-story current addition. Here's some side elevations. Once again, showing kind of an expansion of the ground floor and addition of the new. These are the renderings provided by the applicant. So we're looking at the back of the house. This is the new side porch, as well as the new 2-story addition with the bathroom. And there was one question by one of the board members that they may ask about configuration of windows on this story, and it may be because of the bathroom configuration. So I'll let the applicant talk a little bit about that. And here's that side by side showing, they're not exactly on, but this peak of this existing addition would be about right here. So you can kind of see that this 2nd floor would be about in this area right here. In staff's findings, I did notice that I did not grab and change the old 2004 comprehensive plan, which until December of this last year has been our guiding document for our comprehensive plan findings. So we used to have a finding that said policy 3.5 5.3.8, which is preserve and accentuate historic resources as part of an urban environment that is being reshaped by development projects. The new iteration of that concept is in our new adopted as of December 2022 comprehensive plan, which is strategy 2.3.C, which is encourage property owners to preserve historic structures and a state as close to the original construction as possible, while also allowing the structure to be used in an economically viable manner. So generally the same kind of findings, but I wanted to let the board know that I missed this 2004 comprehensive plan finding. And so I thought this was a good education point as we move forward in our staff reports. We'll have new comprehensive plan findings because we have a newly adopted comprehensive plan. Staff has generally some standard conditions of approval. I'll walk through them. New windows shall be wood, fiberglass clad wood or metal clad wood material, and shall include the same dimensions exterior trim as the existing windows on the home. The applicant shall provide the window details to staff before placing orders or installing to demonstrate compliance with this condition. This is kind of turning into the new standard condition for historic remodels and new construction. Number two, this approval is subject to receiving approval for the geohazard review. If approved, review requires a redesign of the project that either increases the square footage of the addition or requires new retaining walls that exceed 3.5 feet of exposed wall, additional review by the Historic Review Board is required. Approved wall types include poured in place concrete, brick, basalt veneer, or natural rockery. So this is really providing direction if through the geohazard review there needs to be some additional support walls or something changes. The applicant and the board have kind of a clear direction of what is the threshold to come back to the board and what material they could use with board approval. I don't think there's any anticipation that anything needs to change as part of the geohazard, but this is a just in case condition to provide additional direction to the applicant. 3, this is one that I brought in as staff, and I would like to better understand what the applicant and the Historic Review Board think. This also comes out of the Secretary of Standards for Rehabilitation, and I attached the preservation brief for additions, which generally looks at additions being on I kind of see it as a little bit of a balanced seesaw of you want to be compatible with the historic resources, but you also don't want to create a false sense of history. And so designing an addition that balances those two is really the goal of both the Secretary of Interior standards and our design guidelines. One thing I did identify is with the same siding dimensions as the existing house, it may be construed that addition is not new and has always been there. So one recommendation I would have as staff is to have a slightly differentiated drop siding width, even if it's only a couple inches, to further differentiate that addition. And that's something I'd be interested in what the board or the applicant thinks about that. And then there was a request by the neighborhood to ensure that adjacent trees were adequately protected. The design guidelines for new construction and even the designation, a survey form for the Busch house doesn't really mention or bring in the trees as a contributing resource onto the site. And so there's not a lot of nexus under 1740 or the design guidelines for additions to require individual tree retention. But I do have a staff just to acknowledge to try to protect any trees in the rear as part of this process, if even outside of the geohazard review, though it is not a requirement because there is no specific code criteria I could connect to. And so some of the options that the boards have this evening is you could approve the proposal with conditions as staff recommended, approve the proposal with modified conditions and provide revised findings, deny the proposal and provide revised findings, or continue the hearing and request more information. These are all the basic options the board has every hearing. So I am going to end my slideshow, and I'm available for any questions the board may have of me before we move to the applicant.
Question.
Do you, go ahead.
Well, no questions from me.
I just had a question about the number 3 that you were talking about the change in the, let's see, what did I read that? It was number 3, to differentiate the new addition, a slightly differentiated drop siding width. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that? So I'm not familiar with it.
Sure. So it's a common design approach. It's not a requirement, but when you are looking at ways to design additions that are compatible, but also don't fake a history, you don't infer that they were always there, you have to use design approaches to do that. So there could be many different ways. You could use different materials, you could use a different massing, you could have a slightly different or simplified design style. For a lot of times you'll see if you have a really ornate building, and I think what the applicant has done exactly that is they've not brought any of those ornate scroll work onto the addition. So they've simplified the addition. That's one way to do it. I think what I'm recommending to staff is not only the simplification and not continuing any of the schoolwork and the Queen Anne design, but also to do the differentiation of siding, even if it's a half an inch, just slightly differentiating it. But that is really something up to the board of the applicant. Has the applicant designed an addition that is compatible and differentiates new from old? And that is really the question you always ask when you design additions onto historic resources. And there's many tools in the toolbox to get you to that answer.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions either for staff. So we will move on. We will move on to the public testimony. The applicant will speak first. This is just a reminder. They will have up to 15 minutes to describe their application. Then we will have 5 minutes for representatives of an organized neighborhood association, government agency, or...
I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on Christina's comment, and I concur with what you're suggesting. The contemporary drop siding that we're going to get readily available is about 1/4 to 3/8 inch off of the historic siding. So we would be utilizing that. In addition with that, we would have corner boards that would butt up to the siding rather than being applied over the siding, and the window trim as well, differentiated further. And we have also not brought the spindle work and elaborate Victorian detailing around on the back side of the building. Trying to be very sympathetic to the home. The rear addition that we're proposing to replace was an early addition, and it was very poorly built. The original home was extremely well built. It's got an incredible quarried stone foundation and very solid. The back portion has no foundation. It's falling into the dirt. And so as part of this project, we will hopefully be creating something that will enable the house to withstand another 100 years and be contemporary and have a second bathroom, which a home this size would typically have in this day and age, and a master closet. The master closet is the area where you have seen windows. Now that's not a full height wall there. It's only about 6 feet high and then vaulted up on the interior to try to keep the massing down and keep it subsidiary to the original home. If there are any other questions, happy to answer them.
Todd, good to see you. I'm just curious about the one side looking to the, it would be looking east. It looks like the window is off-centered as opposed to the opposite side where it's centered. And it looks, to me, it looks a little imbalanced on the second floor. And I'm wondering why wasn't the window centered, or why are there not two windows?
Well, we did look at two windows. One of them would end up being in the shower, which is not very desirable, especially for wood windows. And Victorian homes oftentimes were not balanced. They were very asymmetrical, and I think it's appropriate for this style to be asymmetrical. In fact, there are a couple of windows, one window on this house that if you look at it, you'll realize it's clearly not centered on the gable.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah.
I don't even notice it.
So I don't.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I mean, if there's a design reason, you know, I get it. It just, you know, standing there looking at it where it's going to be, it looked to me just a little bit off. It just kind of made the addition look a little bit off to me. So I was just curious about that.
That elevation is actually not going to be very visible either. You're up against the bank of the hill there.
Right. Right, and you're facing a wooded area. I mean, it's not like it's going to be a visually intimidating thing. I mean, it's just that it just seemed out of balance in my eye, and I was just curious about the design thought there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions for the applicant?
No.
I guess I had contemplated that number 3 also, and I guess it's not so much a question as when I considered that, and then I checked with the examples in the preservation brief and so forth. Even though they mention using different exterior materials as one means of differentiating, they also do show some examples that applaud the use of the same materials and with other, you might say, design cues. And when I look at the rendering, and if this is in deliberations, that's fine, this can wait. But I mean, I guess it could be something in question. I was just a little dismayed at using a little different wood siding from just non-professional experience in the building industry, not as preservation experts. We would have tended to look at, a different siding material as is a little bit of a compromise in that either it's not available or something else less expensive or whatever like that. And to me, it does seem differentiated with the roof line, the way it applies, and particularly with the corner inset on the right rear. And there's a small wall on the other side that just has the entry door, and you can't really see on the rendering if it's offset. It does not appear to be on the plan, but I thought if that one was offset as well, to me, that gives a good design clue that is an addition. So, I mean, I guess my own personal thought is it would be wonderful if the siding could actually match, but maybe that's not possible either. So I don't know if that's been explored or not.
We could match the siding. It would be a custom milled product. What's readily available in the cedar right now is slightly narrower. We can't match that existing profile unless it's custom milled.
I mean, I don't certainly see it as a deal breaker, but like I say, not being a preservation expert, but just from being in the building industry through my career, generally when we would look at additions and so forth, and oftentimes with this aspect of, okay, what came first and what's an addition and so forth, clearly that does differentiate it, but it just, I think in some of our minds would have been preferable to match, and I think I see differentiation in the building other way. So that was just basically that comment, so.
Well, we don't want to do anything too drastic. We want to match the drop siding profile. where the corners abut, you will see a difference. And hopefully it won't be too extreme though.
Yeah, pretty well concealed in either event. I mean, that either way wouldn't be noticeable generally to the public view.
Right.
So,
and we are setting the addition inward from both corners of the building.
both corners, good. I like that. I think that's very helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Would you be putting the fish scales shingles up in the gable on the back of the addition?
Have we gotten that far?
Yes, we would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they would be simple sawn shingles, not fish scale.
Not the fish scale, just single
I
shot.
differentiate it, but we want to be consistent too.
Great. Are there any more questions for the applicant? No. Do we have any other public comments on this application? No.
Not that I know of right now.
Okay, great. So we will now move into board deliberations. How about we start with Board Member Powell?
Okay. Well, I'm actually kind of like the idea of the differentiated siding. I've seen a lot of bad things done where they've tried to match them up exactly, and they don't look it. They're offset. I mean, if it were cheaper or if it were more efficient or something, I get it. But it seems to me that going a quarter inch off is going to give us the differentiation that we need. Keep it historic, keep it looking like it should. I support that, and I think that's something that we should consider that. As for my personal feeling, I mean, I think it's a good design. I'm just a little off with the window being offset, but that's just my eye. I don't think it's a deal breaker for certainly, because I noticed on the backside it's also a little bit offset. So, I guess it does kind of match that way. So I won't be terribly concerned about that one. Other than that, I don't really have any major concerns.
Great. Board Member Green?
Yeah, I agree, Board Member Powell, and that is a beautiful historic home, and I think a very nice addition that complements the home. I think it's very nice design. As far as the window placement, I see what Board Member Powell is referencing, realizing that can make a real compromise on room layout, and also a large part is that we want the buildings to work. That makes them more valuable, and that's part of the equation. And so, yeah, I don't have a struggle with the window placement. I see what he's referencing there, but I think that's fine. The siding differentiation, not a strong concern either way with me. I mean, that was just my take on it. I don't see that as a problem either way because I don't see it being particularly visible. And I do like the fact that if in fact on the opposite side where the covered porch is, if that little entry wall is also offset where the corner board continues down through the same way it does the other side, I think that does a nice job of differentiating, you might say, the addition. So I think it's a very nice project.
Great. I also think it's a beautiful project. I have had the advantage, you came before us for design review last year. So I have seen this before. And I think it looks really nice. I'm in support of differentiating the siding. I think that's another way to differentiate aside from just the stepping back. I see what Board Member Powell is saying about the windows, although when you stand on the street or you're coming up the street, either way, you really can't see those windows at all. I can't imagine that they're going to be very visible. And I completely understand the interior layout sort of negotiations that you've had to do with that. So I think it's a beautiful project, and I am in support of the design.
Sabrina, could I ask one more question? The question is this, speaking of windows, are the current windows wood windows, and are we going to match those windows, or are they going to try and match them? Same type of window and all that will be the same? I didn't notice that in the documentation.
Yeah, we currently have single pane wood windows everywhere in the house. We're also in the process of getting redone. We're probably about 3/4 of the way through that. And I think I might, given the previous application, may reapply for a small grant for that. It's taking a lot longer than we thought to get it all done. We've have about 5 more windows that need to be done, including the 2 that will probably be moved a little bit. One window is going to be moved a little bit as part of this remodeling, and I'm assuming we will keep that window in that room. But I think we would look to find windows that look very much like our windows currently. So whatever the best quality is for that. So
there's a company in Springfield that we're looking at that will make for our windows that will match.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, great. Great. That's excellent. I think that's a nice finish. Thank you.
All right. It sounds like the board might be in agreement. Yeah.
Yep. We need a motion.
We do. I'm scrolling back to get the number. Let's see.
So our 4 options, if I'm remembering correctly.
So if the board wants to approve as proposed with the conditions proposed by staff, they can make that motion. It sounds like there's no recommendation for any altered conditions. So if that's the case, you can just move to approve the file number GLUA 23-01, HR 23-01 as recommended by staff.
So moved.
And I'll second.
All right. I'll call the question. Board Member Green?
Yes.
Board Member Powell?
Aye.
Chair Ferry?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, good luck. Enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Right. I think I'm moving.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Our second.
Excuse me.
Oh, apologies. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Christina.
I was just coughing.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh, okay. Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't quite catch it. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So now we will open the record for Oregon City File Number GLUA 2203 and HR 2302. This is 100 Center Street. It's a historic review for solar panel installation on a street facing roof planes. And it's a designated structure in the McLoughlin Conservation District. I will ask each board member if they have any ex parte contact, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare, and if they have made a site visit. Board Member Powell?
I have made a site visit. I spoke with no one, and I have no concerns.
Board Member Green?
Okay, I've made a site visit and no ex parte contact and no conflict of interest.
I also have made a site visit and have no conflicts of interest or ex parte contact. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any board members about these disclosures? All right, we will now commence with the staff report.
All right. Oop. Apologies. I'll see. I'll try this again. I'm utilizing 2 screens nowadays, and I'm not the expert on it. Okay, let's try my share. And then I'm going to go to here. Can people see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll do my from the beginning. Okay. So this is a request for the allowance of solar panels on a street-facing facade of a designated structure in the McLoughlin Conservation District, the Samuel and Mary Myers House. This is GLUA 23-0003 and HR 23-002. So we had, since the release of the agenda last week, there has been one public comment that's been submitted that has been sent to the board in an email last week, but I do want to add it into the record. So this is a neighbor who writes, I'm writing today in regards to the installation of the solar panels at 100 Center Street. I'm writing to voice my enthusiastic support of this project. I am thrilled to see another house in my neighborhood taking this great step towards a cleaner environmental and energy independence. My hope is that any historical preservation concerns are kept in the realm of reason and this solar installation may proceed. I myself treasure the historic architecture of our city, but I also treasure a sustainable quality of life for those that inhabit it now and future generations to come. And that was from Joel Corson. So that has now been added into the record. So this is a designated historic site located at the intersection of Center Street and First Street. First Street kind of ends as a improved right-of-way right around the corner, but it is a corner lot. So you'll see the arrow here in the red. This is the elevation, the south-facing elevation is why it is in front of the board today. The board has approved panels facing the street and visible from the right-of-way in the past, as long as they were not distracting from or too prominently visible when viewing the primary facade or entryway. The panels proposed on the Samuel and Mary Myers house will be visible from the right-of-way, and that's why it is in front of the board. There's a total of 27 panels. 18 are on the front elevation, which requires historic review board approval. 4 are on a secondary side, and 5 are on the secondary rear, which are staff level approval. So the applicant has provided the layout of showing the panels. The one thing that they did not provide was an indication of, what kind of alternative analysis if the panels were not provided. That being said, if you remove the panels on this elevation, it would substantially reduce their ability, I think, to move forward on the proposal. 18 out of 27 is quite a lot of panels, though the applicant is here this evening to speak to that. Here's some street views showing to your right is that once again, that front elevation, you'll see it from the side. This is that same the front elevation with the side view and the rear addition. You'll see the panels that would be able to be reviewed on a staff level because they're on a secondary elevation. This is a 3D rendering showing the panels locations. And these are the traditional conditions of approval that have been added to solar panels, which look at ensuring that they are no more than 5 inches above the roof surface, that they are any ground or wall mounted equipment does not obscure architectural features and are screened, and the panels are black and are and no unfinished or shiny metal frames or visible parts are permitted, and once again, ground-mounted equipment is blocked from pedestrian view by fencing or landscaping, regardless of where it gets put. So those are the traditional conditions. I'm going to end my slideshow at the moment. Let's see if the board has any questions for staff. Second. I'm going to stop share. There we go. The applicant is here this evening to answer any questions, and I'm also available if the board has any questions for staff.
I have a question, Christina. In reviewing this application, one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that there's a lot of solar panels. It seems like a lot more than we usually get proposed. I was wondering if you had any information about that, or does the...
No. Yeah, I don't. And I think this solar panels are kind of a new proposal from my experience. And so I'm really looking to the board. You know, I think the policy on solar panels, which was created a couple of years ago, really said, you know, go down this path for staff level approval, and ones that can be seen from primary elevation should go to the board so they can be reviewed as context specific. Not necessarily that you can approve it or cannot, but you can have some discretionary review from these. So I'm actually looking more towards the board to provide more policy direction. So when applicants come in, I can provide them direction, because I don't have at the level of background and understanding what the board wants. I mean, other jurisdictions have chosen just to allow solar panels as a permitted use on historic resources. I know City of Portland does. But you know, Oregon City has chosen to kind of have it two-tracked. So if you can provide, as we move forward on these solar panel applications, additional direction to staff, that would be really helpful.
Were there any other questions for staff?
No, I just wanted to agree with you that, you know, it seems that it's a mass of solar panels, more than I have seen on previous applications. And I'm wondering, and maybe we can talk to the applicant about it, but I'm wondering if there are ways to get either smaller or more efficient solar panels and less of them. Especially on that south-facing facade. That on the other side, I'm not terribly concerned, but 18 of them is an awful lot on that one side. So that's just a question I'll have probably of staff, of not staff, but of the applicant or yeah. So that's my question at this point.
Apologies.
At this point.
No questions. Okay. Great. So the applicant will have up to 15 minutes to describe their application. If you could please state your name and place of residence.
Hi, this is Michael Totten. I'm at 100 Center Street in Oregon City. So my wife and I decided to do this. We've been wanting to do this for a long time. And we have been waiting. Unfortunately, she can't be here tonight because she's teaching a class right now. So, but we've been wanting to do this for a long time. And we waited until it made financial sense to do so. Because this is not an inexpensive project. It's costing tens of thousands of dollars. So we've been waiting until it's less expensive to have solar panels than it is to not have solar panels. So we're at that point now. And the design that the solar company gave us, Solgen, we went over this with them. We spent at least an hour discussing it. Is the placement of the panels is the only logical one, because obviously you can't have panels on the north root because the sun is in south in this hemisphere. So that's why they are where they are. And the reason we have the number that we have is because we want to get, well, there's two reasons. One, we want to get as much power from the sun as possible. Ideally, we would have no electric bill at all, that we would just get enough power from the sun to not have to pay PG&E anything. It's not possible in our house because our house is all electric. We don't have a gas furnace, we have a heat pump. So we don't have a Northwest natural gas bill. PG&E is everything. And it's just not possible to cover heating, cooling, light, all of it with solar panels. But we wanted to get as much as possible. So we're able to, with this design, we're able to get 65% of the power we use in a year from the solar panels. And if we were to reduce the number of solar panels, we would reduce that. But also it wouldn't make financial sense for us because it's expensive just to install the system. Like if we were to install a system with one solar panel, I don't know what the breakdown is, but it would be an enormous percentage, right? So you get, the more solar panels you have, the more it's worth the large investment. And if we could do fewer solar panels, well, sure, that would be great for aesthetic reasons. But honestly, I don't think that the solar panels harm the aesthetic of the house because they are flush with the roof. They're not sticking up. They don't change the shape of the house. So it doesn't bother me. And I asked some of my neighbors what they thought of it, and nobody thought that it would be a problem. So that's all I have to say, unless you have questions. I don't know what else to say at this point.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments on this application? No. Okay. So we will go into, I'm sorry. We will, we'll have board members, if they ask, do any board members have any questions for the applicant? Board Member Powell, do you have any questions?
Well, I'm not sure that the applicant can answer my question. I mentioned having less panels, and I understand his need to not have less panels to get his percentage up, and that's fine, and I get that. I guess my question is more towards the manufacturer. Are there more efficient panels that they could use less of them to get that same kind of benefit? And I'm not sure the applicant knows the answer to that question.
I do actually.
Do you? Okay.
I do. Yeah. Because if the answer was yes, then we would use those and get more than 65% of our power covered. We could approach 100%. I don't know if we could get there. If we waited 5 years, maybe we could. I don't know. But these are all this is the most power that it is physically possible to get on the roof that we have.
Okay, yeah, that I understand, and I appreciate it. But to Christine's question, I guess, of the board's process, I think that's something we probably ought to have a work session with, or at least talk about it a little deeper and get some more information from the manufacturers about what can and can't be done, because we've had a couple of these so far and we're kind of just not sure. So I think we all need to have a little better education about what is available and what can be done and what can't be done. But thank you, applicant, for answering that question. I appreciate it.
Board Member Green, did you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions for the applicant, I don't think. Yeah.
I don't have any questions either. So we will move on to board deliberations. How about we start with Board Member Green?
Yeah, the Christina's comment, I think, is worthwhile because we have to grapple with this going forward on a fairly routine basis. It would appear, and so trying to get a consensus is good. And I like Board Member Powell's suggestion that actually perhaps a work session or somehow the better informed we can be would certainly be helpful to that extent. Looking at this particular installation, that one slope and, the two south facing slopes, one on the addition and on the main house, I think would clearly be the most productive as far as power production. And in this particular case, I think there is kind of a helpful caveat in that there's a fairly large tree right on the corner of the lot. So that roof slope would be most noticeable when you're driving northeast on Center Street. and that tree kind of obscures the roof a little bit. I drove by looking at that. So that in this particular instance, that kind of mitigates, you might say, that real, perhaps overbearing presence of solar panels, and it doesn't shadow the roof. So, I mean, that's fortunate in this particular case. Not all cases would have that. So, as a general thought, how much of the roof should be covered with solar panels? That's probably where a discussion with the historic, with the board members, if we would be more comfortable with, you might say, having only a portion of the roof covered. Honestly, I think in my view, it's almost go or no go with solar panels, because if half of the roof or 2/3 of the roof is covered with solar panels, it's pretty noticeable. So, and I can certainly appreciate any applicant's desire to maximize the power generation, even if they're feeding some back into the grid. That's helpful even to the community, and specifically helpful to the applicant. So I guess I see it as not maybe too troubling if you have a really optimal solar exposure on a roof plane, and particularly if there's a little mitigation, in this case with the tree. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at on it. I think that it has merit, and I can appreciate the comment of the applicant that you might say economy of scale. If you put on 15 panels or 30 panels, it's not going to probably cost twice as much to put on 30 panels. It might cost 30% more, something like that. So there's an economic benefit in maximizing it. So, but obviously there's cautions, but I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Board Member Powell?
Well, I think there's a lot on that south-facing facade. I think that's a lot of solar panels, and I think it will be visible coming down Center Street. However, saying that, I also think that the layout, if they follow the layout that they have, because it follows the roof line and the roof completely, I think it will be probably a little less noticeable. And so, as the applicant stated, so rather than have it piecemealed like it is on the other two facades, I think the concern we have is just the massing of it. But I do believe that because it'll basically cover the entire roof, I don't think it will be quite as noticeable. So I guess saying that, and not having enough information to be able to offer any suggestions to the applicant about getting different types of solar panels or anything like that, I guess that's really what I have to say.
Thank you. I believe that I feel the same way you both do. I feel like the massing is it's a lot, but I also, went back and forth as to whether, reducing that number and having a smaller unit that that didn't cover the entire side of the gable would be more visually disturbing or less. I ultimately think that it might be less to have it fully covered because you won't see the sort of tannish brown roof underneath. And I do agree with Board Member Green that the trees do sort of obscure, although you will of course see the panels. My personal sort of feeling is always that, environmental concerns for technologies like this, which are removable and do not harm the house in any way, should take precedence. So I feel like I'm in support of the solar panel installation.
So are we at a point for a motion then, perhaps?
It sounds like we are, yes.
Okay, well, I would move to approve GLUA 23-00003 and HR 23-00002 with the conditions of approval suggested by staff.
Second.
All right. Board Member Powell,
Aye.
Board Member Green,
Aye.
Chair Ferry,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay. Thank you for your application.
Thank you all.
Enjoy your solar panels.
Thanks. Do you need anything else from me?
Nope. And then, Michael, I'll work with the building department, and when you turn in for your permits, I'll be the one that review it, and I will clear it with this approval.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
All right. We have any other business?
I have a couple communication items if we're at that point yet.
I think so.
Well, before we get away
Sure,
from
sure.
too far away from the solar panel, I really do think I have been trying to do a little research myself, but I think it would be beneficial if we could all have some work session or some time to review what we're going to get more and more of this coming up. And, I feel really uncomfortable approving these things when I really don't understand the whole concept of it all. And, but I also understand the applicant, that's not the applicant's fault, so I would just like to have more information and have us all have that same information. So we're all singing off the same song sheet. And I don't know if there's folks that can come in and speak to us, or if we can have a work session or something, but that's something I'd like to put on our agenda down the road.
Yeah, I can reach out to the State Historic Preservation Office because they work with communities all over the state, and they might be able to recommend any speakers that can come in or experts, and even other staff maybe that are in other jurisdictions that work with this. And I think every city might come down a little different, like as everything relates to Historic Review Board. There's the sideboards, and then there's this gray area in the middle that we all work in, and every community kind of finds its own place. So just kind of understanding what everyone else is doing and how they view it might be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And then we can make our own space, but we really need to have more information. I think I do. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur, and I like the notion of discovering what some of the other historic communities are doing. I mean, that's helpful, and the input from the applicants' vendors, of course, will always be supportive or somewhat potentially skewed. So, from Solar Professional that could shed some light on it, you might say an unbiased education for us would be helpful. Yeah.
Sounds good. And that actually segues right into my additional communication points. So next month we'll be reviewing the draft design guidelines for middle housing and formally sending that to the City Commission. I'll be working with Aquila on setting a time and date for it to be recommended for the City Commission, a future City Commission hearing date. And I'll recommend at least the chair and maybe more board members come and present. And then really it would be a resolution that the City Commission would be adopting that would formally adopt those design guidelines. And then they would be a standalone 2-pager that we'll have on our page for new construction. And so really the first step is for you to formally recommend approval and then present to the City Commission at a future meeting. The Preservation Month is coming up in May, and the Ruth Powers Preservation Award. How have you, send this back to Chair Ferry, who's been here for numerous years. What's the process that Kelly did to move forward with nominations for the Powers Award?
You know, in the past, she's just asked us if any of us have recommendations or, you know, projects that we would like to put forward.
Okay.
And then she sort of took them, and I don't know exactly how she decided, but
okay.
She brought them before us and we sort of made a decision about it.
Okay, so that would be probably at the April meeting, would be the very last chance. So I'll put out this right now, kind of between now and really the month of March and early April, start thinking about projects in the last calendar year or even calendar year and a half that were either, you know, it doesn't have to be that the board approved them. So it could be a new construction you thought was you know, really nimble in the area, an addition that the board approved, or even just a property owner who on their own has just quietly been preserving their house or, you know, adding on to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a, ideally it is in either the McLoughlin District or, but it doesn't have to be. So it could also be a person that you think has been a great advocate for preservation over the years. So we've also had more than one award some years. There's been a person and a project. So send me any of your recommendations, just a random email, and I'll kind of collect them. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but when you're, you know, thinking driving to the store one day and you're remembering it, just send me a quick email and I'll collect those this next month. And that is presented either at the first or second City Commission meeting in May for Preservation Month, depending on, you know, get timing and letting the applicant know. I don't know if we're having any specific Preservation Month activities beyond that this year. I'll coordinate with Aquila and see which is in our grant application or what. I know in the past, our Parks Department has done Preserve Our Past Poetry. So I'll check in to see if that's still happening and we can, you know, support that. One thing that I haven't done in any of these meetings yet is look at a work plan for this upcoming year. Our Natural Resource Committee is actually thinking of doing a biennium work plan to match the biennium budget, which starts July 1. So that's something to think about. The Historic Review Board could do is rather than a calendar year plan, look at it more as a biennium plan for the budget year. And so that's something I could add to a future meeting to go over work plan ideas and think, you know, one thing that board member Powell brought up, which is additional educational sessions related to solar panels or other items. We can have a list of things we want to have additional education sessions on. The compatible change project that the board worked on the last 2 years with Kelly Reed, at some point needs to come back. That was looking at the definition of new construction and providing additional detail, as well as the definition of what is a major public improvement, because both of those don't really have the detail needed to look to see when something does or does not meet the criteria to go in front of the board. And so that would probably be brought back at a future work session to go over what's been done to date and do a work plan for next steps. But kind of open it back to, and we only have 3 people here tonight, so we don't have to come up with that. But I mean, I'm thinking it would be either the March or April meeting where we'd go over a work plan that maybe would get adopted by the end of this fiscal year, ready for the next biennium.
Sounds good.
And then there was one final thing I wanted to bring up. The Planning Commission has been, they discussed at their last meeting, adding some additional wording to their agendas, which encouraged people to make sure they submitted their public comments earlier on in the day of the meeting. And so the Planning Commission actually put a 3 p.m. deadline for emailing comments in to allow time for staff to send that to the board. And then anything after 3 p.m. would have to actually be physically presented by the person at a hearing. Right now the Planning Commission meets, in person. This is online. We only have 3 people out of the 5 here tonight, but that's something, it'd be good to hear from the board if that's something you'd want to add on to future HRB agendas that, in a way, it's a way to make sure that I'm not sending you last minute emails at 6:55 or 5:55 that may have a lot of information, and trying to encourage people not to kind of do information dumps right before hearings. That being said, we have to encourage people to get the Zoom link if they can't, if they do email. But that is something, if the board wants to choose at a future agenda, they could add that same language that the Planning Commission is now going to add.
So is 3 o'clock the right time?
That's what Planning Commission chose, in the sense that it gave a chance for staff to get that information to planning commissioners. A lot of Planning Commission applications are a little more complex. Oftentimes they might have a really complicated transportation study or something a little more meaty. And so that was something the planning commissioners wanted to make sure that they didn't get those information dumps, right before hearing. That is what they chose. The Historic Review Board could have a different time. Also, the planning staff needs to go set up the Planning Commission hearing chambers. And so we often are away from our computers for sometimes while we set up. So there was just also some staffing issues related to make sure we didn't miss emails that came in, which is a little bit different with this right now being online. So I wanted, knowing that the Historic Review Board and Planning Commission are both quasi-judicial boards, and it might make sense to share the same protocol. Right now we're a little bit different, and so not really looking for specific direction this evening because we only have 3 board members, but it is something it'd be nice to think about in this next month or 2 if this is something you would want to take on to add to your agenda to provide a kind of a day of deadline for emailing public comment.
Okay.
And that's all I have. That was a lot of information, but that's all I have.
Okay. Great. Does anyone have anything else to add? Or
I guess I just briefly going back to the root powers reward. I think, well, I don't know what's going on, other than what we see come through our system. So any suggestions that come through to Christina or anybody that feeds them in, if they could get fed to us so we could evaluate them. Otherwise, I feel like I really kind of a dry well.
Yeah, I think definitely send them to me and I'll send them back to the board. We'll Carrie Richter from the last legal as make sure we don't have serial meetings. So just send them straight to me and I will forward it to the group as a recommendation.
Sure.
And then we'll gather them. I'll gather them all up and the board can kind of determine what they want to do. Was it done at a meeting or was, so the board then kind of decided at the April meeting what they wanted to announce, and then Kelly went and contacted the property owner. Is that generally how it went?
yeah, I think so. I mean, we sent in, I only know what I sent in. I don't know what anybody else sent in, but I know and it was just, projects that I saw around the neighborhood that I really liked. And she would write back and be like, oh, this one applies, this one doesn't really, or we've already given those people an award or something. So, so it kind of got narrowed down to like who we suggested and then who was eligible. And then we sort of decided amongst ourselves between the different ones.
Okay. If you want to take a look at who has won in the past, every winner is attached to the Ruth Powers Preservation Award page on our website. And so you can click on previous ones just to get a feel of previous winners.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Well, all right. Well, thank you all. It was nice to see you. And then I'll just close. Yeah, I'll just close the meeting. So I will now adjourn the Historic Review Board February 28th meeting.